I'm Megan Zettelmoyer. I'm the marketing manager here at NAI Keystone. And thank you for joining us for our quarterly, biannually update. Brian is going to get us started with his office roundup for 2021 and sort of predictions or where we think the market's going in 2022. You want to go ahead, Brian?
All right. All set. Well, good morning, everyone. So, one of the things that we normally start with is talking about, the vacancy rates and some of the rental rates on the office side. So I'm actually not going to start with that and really go into a whole lot of it because, on the office side and the medical side, there's been quite a bit of space that's been added to the market over the past 12 to 18 months. A lot of that space has been some downsizing of Tower and, some other larger organizations locally. So a lot of that space, I look at as specialty space. So we're not including that in some of our vacancy rates, which is why I'm not going to really talk a whole lot about that. I'm just going to talk about, break it up in a couple different segments, some of our positive stories over 21 into 22, things going on in 22, or at least that we see, and then some of the challenges I think we may end up facing. So as far as, and we can ask, or anybody can ask any questions at the end of either my section or the entire section. We're happy to answer the ones that we can. So as far as some of the positive stories, Stratic Systems, they're opening up their new headquarters in Wyomissing. Now that started in 21, expecting to finalize in the first quarter of 22, but that was an older office building that was repurposed for their new headquarters, which they're also expanding onto. Obviously, the Drexel Medical School's opening at the end of last year was positive for the whole West Reading, Wyomissing, or the older side of Wyomissing area. Riverfront Credit Union, we talked about that a little bit last year. Riverfront expanded into their new facility on Kaiser Boulevard as well, which more than doubled the size that they had in the market. Members First Credit Union, they've opened a number of locations throughout the county, which is great to see for a retailer expanding into our market. Penn Gaming, their new Morgantown location, D&B Construction doubling their size in Wyomissing, and then of course Tower Health opening some of their new strategic locations in Sinking Spring and Wyomissing. So going into 22, some of the things that we've been watching are, which segments are going to grow, which things may slow down. One of the things that's has been happening since although COVID's not done, since kind of the close of the big part of COVID has been the residential sector. So residential has continued to boom. My personal opinion is I think it's going to go in well into 22. There's numerous multifamily projects that are taking place in Berks County. Spring Township, there's a site going through entitlement, Sinking Spring, Leesport, Exeter. So a lot of the residential expansion is countywide, not just concentrated on one area. Same thing for large single family cluster developments in the lower Heidelberg along Pendergast Road in Green Valley. And again, we're happy to provide a lot of this information. Some folks may know those areas, some may not, but we're happy to give you an outline of where some of this expansion is happening if you want to see it on a map. The other thing that's been pretty interesting with Berks in general is a lot of these reviews that we do, it talks about the larger companies that are moving in, or a lot of musical chairs that have been happening for companies that are downsizing, expanding. One of the things that we've seen is a lot of smaller companies starting to move into Berks County, whether that be engineering firms, other small financial firms, law firms, which you may have seen the most recent news with Barley Snyder and Liza Teller with their merger. Non-system related healthcare, which I think is important to point out, because we've had Tower acquiring quite a bit of practices, Penn State. Now we're starting to see non-system related healthcare starting to move into the area, and other doctors that are expanding what they do, dental practices, orthodontic groups, so on and so forth. So we have a ton of momentum across the board. The negative, although the activity is strong, it kind of goes what I said earlier, and that is there's a lot of space that's being added to the market, but it's not necessarily space that's going to compete with everything that's out there. So like the Drexel Medical School has a couple floors that are available. obviously that's not going to compete with, some of the secondary, tertiary buildings that we have in, Spring Ridge, Wyomissing Professional Center, and some of those other campuses. So, we look at that as all the positive, and then we talk about, what are some things that could stall the momentum that we have going on. And again, these are all opinion of related, some of it's based on what we see, some of it's based on what we read, but obviously employees, I think is one of the big concerns. If you own a business, run a business, or lead a business, I mean, it's one of the things that are keeping owners, up at night. It's finding, dependable quality folks that are going to help them with their growth. So I think that's one of the concerns. Construction cost, I think, is probably one of my bigger concerns. Nothing's getting cheaper right now, and it's taken time to get everything pushed through. So, as a developer or a real estate investor, you're putting a lot of these deals together on the front end. So if you're developing a site, you're negotiating your lease terms, you're negotiating the economics all up front. Then you start going through your land development and your permitting. And by the time you get everything done, and you're about to put a shovel in the ground, the cost could have jumped 30%. So and no contractor wants to commit, 6, 12, 18 months in advance. So that's one of my concerns moving forward. And that's not only for the larger projects, but it's also for a lot of the tenant fit outs. And then of course, lead times. So, the 90, 120 days from touring a space and getting it delivered is, may work on some occasions, but for the most part, the lead times I think are one of the challenges. It's hard to, start a project and finish a project in 90 days with the permitting and of course, sometimes how long it takes to get the product, through the front door. So the construction product, that is. So those are a few of my concerns that could stall the growth. But again, there's a lot of momentum coming into 22. So as far as where I see 22, or at least the sectors that I see growth in. So retail sector, as it relates to drive-through capabilities. So not necessarily the big box retail, but more of the, single tenant, dual tenant that contains drive-throughs, I think are going to continue expanding, which we've seen mainly because of the convenience factor. I also think you're going to start seeing some outside health systems expanding into Berks, more on the perimeters, maybe not right in the central part of the Berks, where Tower and Penn State have a pretty good handle, but some of the perimeters, I think we're gonna start seeing some other health systems come in. Other retail, grocery has always been strong. I think it's going to continue being strong, even with those single tenant deals, or smaller retail grocery uses. The 7-Eleven, Turkey Hills of the world, I think you're going to continue seeing expansion from them. You've already seen the expansion with the Wawas and the Sheets, and of course, Royal Farms is starting to finally come into Berks County as well. Smaller mid-sized companies, I think, are going to continue to expand. Auto-related, I think we're going to see a lot of expansion with auto-related retail, whether that's car dealerships or the Advanced AutoZones of the world, the Mavises of the world. I think we're going to see quite a bit of expansion from folks like that. Rental rates. I mean, we need rental rates to rise, specifically in Berks County, especially with construction costs going up. The people that are able to get aggressive right now on deals are the ones that have a low basis on their assets. So I think that's something that we're going to have to see across the board on office, medical, retail. What I also see is land values starting to get compressed. So with construction costs going up, rental rates not quite going up yet, or at least as fast as they need to. It really comes down to where you're going to save some money. And I think land is going to be one of those items that end up getting compressed. As far as cap rates, I mean, we've all seen the market with cap rates. They continue to be aggressive on the medical, the office side, the retail world. I don't see that changing a whole lot in 22. Sorry. I mean, that was my watch. She didn't understand what I was saying. So, with interest rates rising, I mean, they're not going to rise enough that I think it's going to put a damper on the cap rate market. But I guess time will tell. So there's a lot of cash out there right now. But overall, I think 22 is going to be a pretty good year. We're seeing a lot of momentum, a lot of good things happening. So, hopefully there's not some big news that ends up happening that slows that growth. So that's the office, medical / retail world. Steve? Or
Thanks, Brian.
Should we ask questions right now, or do we want to move on
to the end, I think.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for a great report. You covered a lot of bases. Lots going on in the office world. I'm going to cover industrial and share just a few slides with you. And I'm going to talk about, just to start out here, the Berks industrial market, about 54.5 million square feet. We track 574 buildings in this sector. This next bullet point really is one of the biggest points for today. The last 12 months net absorption in our market was 5.6 million square feet, up from 4.1 million the prior 12 months. The two of those numbers together are just phenomenal for our little market. If you look at percentage-wise, what that does for us. And you've got 2.5 million feet under construction right now, which is really only five buildings, 4 of which are up on I-78 corridor, and one in Onalani Township. So the logistics set is the 36 to 40 foot buildings that we're seeing. Almost all are being leased quickly to e-commerce type companies up on the I-78 corridor. And I call it the corridor. That corridor starts in Hagerstown, Maryland, and comes up to Harrisburg, and then across all the way through east and up into New York, and feeds the Northeast. So it's a strong corridor, and the growth is pretty phenomenal. Locally, we're seeing yet more. Everything is related to e-commerce and their supply chain, what feeds them on the in and outside. We've got local investors who have built a number of buildings closer in. The airport is pretty much sold out. I see Jeremy is on with us today. I want to ask him after this is done to let us know if there are any sites left at the airport. I think they're all under contract. We expect business inventories to logistics space should balance this year, and the supply chain gaps to resolve. Vacancies, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about vacancies, but they're down slightly to 5.3%, 5.53. If we take out two of the big 750 and 1 million square foot on I-78 that are currently vacant, it really takes the fair implied vacancy rate down to 3%, under 3, which is pretty ridiculous. Like Brian, I share the concern over cost increases, and then also the delay in getting product to a job site. This is a Philadelphia stat, roughly 1/3 in the last year in material cost increases. And that's actually sidelined at least one deal. There was a local, one of our clients was going to build a 440,000 foot building up at the airport. And the further he got into the project, he said, I can't handle this. We're up like 35 to 40% more in costs. And it didn't make any sense. So he pushed pause, and he's going to wait and see and continue leasing for his overflow space requirement now. The other part of that is the lead times. I mean, I was with a lift truck supplier yesterday, and they're 36 to 42 weeks out for dock equipment and lift trucks, plastics, steel. The delays are pretty significant. And then, of course, you've got to get your site entitled, and that's not a walk in the park. Getting through the entitlement process, you can easily spend a year doing that. Locally, we've always relied on our core businesses. Manufacturing, from a percentage-wise, has always been up higher than national and higher than the state level in our Berks County area. And that those core industries are batteries, specialty steel, plastics more than ever, lots of food production and machining. We've got a lot of old companies that have continued their growth. We also have some old companies that have, in the last 2 years, sold to private investment groups and been recapitalized, and their sales are projected to go way up. So more space is required. There's not a lot to pick from. We talked a little bit about employees, the need for employees. Berks is not immune to the labor crisis. Everybody across the country is feeling it. Everybody needs more workers. I think we're in a good spot just because we have so many employees to start with, more I think than other areas around us. The strain on labor, I think, is far greater in North Jersey and Lehigh Valley than it is here. On a lease rate, you can see these lines are shooting up pretty quickly. You're seeing rates that have jumped in the last 3 years quite a bit. And I don't think they're going to slow down through 22. I think it might level out. New construction isn't going to help it much there. So it's a matter of finding the right spot for the right company and allow them to grow, get out of their way, let them grow and add employees and get their output jumped up. We've got lots of brokers in the office that do industrial and commercial and office. We'd love to talk to you more about your particular need. And I think that's a high level, just a high level for me today. I can get into more details with anybody if you want to, but that should cover me. Frank, I see you're on, Frank Zukas, from our partner to the north. How is the I-81 corridor, the industrial park up there? Are you full?
We've got
sites
10
left?
exits on Interstate 81 in Schuylkill County, and there are projects in 7 of the 10 that are ongoing right now, either in early stage entitlement, advanced stage entitlement, construction, or the building's up and ready for occupancy. So it's been extremely active and continues to be one in which multiple calls per week come in looking for just raw acreage from usually developers or merchant developers in the New York, New Jersey area.
That's great. That's great news. We love your location. We put tenants and buyers in with you, and you do a great job up there. Thank you for partnering.
Yep, thank you.
Jeremy, anything at the airport? Any sites available?
Yeah, we have 3 sites left, totaling about 160,000 square feet. So you got 100K at one, 20 at one, and 40 at the other. The rest is either sold off and being actively developed, or it's under agreement right now, and we're going through that entitlement period that you just talked about. That takes its time.
Let's have Kyle McKechnie talk with you later today. He think he has a 20 that would fit there. Okay. Any other questions, folks? Megan, I'll yield to you.
Yeah, if no one has any other questions, thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen in to what the guys have to say. Like I said, we'll get a recording out to everyone, and thanks again, and we'll see you sometime soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.